This might be the moment everything finally unravels, because what just happened between 50 Cent and T.I. isn't just rap beef anymore. This feels like something way bigger, something darker, and honestly, something a lot of people didn't see coming. A documentary gets teased, not announced, not promoted, just dropped, and then suddenly deleted. No trailer. No platform. No warning, and yet somehow it's already being called the most damaging project ever linked to T.I. and Tiny. So let's get this straight. Why would 50 Cent, someone who never moves without a plan, randomly throw out a title like Surviving T.I. and Tiny and then disappear? And even more importantly, why did T.I. respond so fast and so carefully? Was that confidence or damage control? Because behind the music, behind the Instagram posts, behind the calm smiles and studio clips, there's a story that never fully went away, allegations that never got a final answer, cases that never saw a courtroom ending, and a narrative that's now suddenly back in the spotlight. But here's the real question nobody wants to ask. Did 50 Cent just reopen something that was supposed to stay buried? Or is this all just another perfectly timed distraction? Either way, what's coming next might change everything. And trust me, this is only the beginning. The moment that post hit the internet, everything shifted. Not slowly, not quietly, instantly. Within minutes, screenshots were circulating like evidence in a case nobody officially opened, but everybody was suddenly investigating. And the name attached to it? 50 Cent, a man who doesn't just post for attention. He posts with intent, and this time, the intent felt different. Because dropping a title like Surviving T.I. and Tiny isn't just random trolling. That's not a meme. That's not a joke. That's a loaded statement. That's a deliberate move designed to trigger memory, controversy, and most importantly, curiosity. And it worked. People didn't just react. They went digging. Suddenly, timelines were being revisited. Old headlines started resurfacing. Clips from interviews, statements, accusations, everything that had faded into the background was being pulled right back into the spotlight like it never left, and at the center of it all stood T.I., not saying much at first, but definitely watching. Now here's where things start getting uncomfortable, because this situation didn't come out of nowhere. This wasn't a random attack. There's history here, layers of tension that go back years. And more importantly, unresolved questions that never really got clear answers. Back in 2021, allegations involving T.I. and Tiny shook the internet in a way that people still remember. It wasn't just one accusation. It wasn't just one voice. Multiple claims started surfacing. Stories that shared similarities. Patterns that people couldn't ignore. At the time, it felt like everything was building towards something major. Legal action was being discussed. Investigations were mentioned. Media outlets were watching closely, but then everything slowed down, not because the conversation ended, but because legally, the situation hit a wall. No criminal charges were filed. No courtroom battles played out. No dramatic verdicts that could settle anything one way or the other. And the reason? Time. The statute of limitations had already expired on key claims, meaning even if questions remained, the legal system couldn't fully process them. It wasn't about proving guilt. It wasn't about proving innocence. It was about the clock running out, and just like that, the situation moved into a strange space. Not confirmed. Not dismissed. Just unresolved. And unresolved stories? They don't disappear. They sit quietly, waiting for the right moment, or the right person, to bring them back. Enter 50 Cent, because if there's one thing he understands better than almost anyone in the industry, it's timing. He didn't release a documentary, he didn't drop footage, he didn't even confirm production. He just said enough, and then stepped back. And somehow, that was more powerful than a full release, because now, people are filling in the blanks themselves. Now speculation is doing the work. Now the internet is connecting dots. Even the ones that might not exist. And while all of this is happening, T.I. is moving in a completely different way. No Panic. No breakdown. No long explanations trying to defend every angle. Instead, music. Studio sessions, public appearances, calculated visibility, almost like he's saying, I'm not running from anything. But here's where things get interesting, because staying visible can mean confidence. Or it can mean control. Control of narrative. Control of perception. Control of what people see. And more importantly, what they don't. And the timing of all this. That's not something you ignore, right? When conversations about his past start heating up again. There's new music. New energy. New focus. Some people call that smart strategy. Others call it distraction. Either way, it's working, because now the audience is split. One side is asking, why now? Why would 50 Cent bring this back at this exact moment? Why bring up something that legally couldn't even be fully explored? What does he gain from it? And the other side is asking something completely different. What if there's more? What if this isn't just about the past? What if this documentary, real or not, is hinting at something deeper? Something that hasn't come out yet? And that's the tension. That's driving everything right now. Not facts, not evidence. Possibility. Because the idea of something being exposed is sometimes more powerful than the exposure itself, and 50 Cent knows that. He's built an entire reputation on understanding how to control attention, how to create moments that don't just trend, but stick. Moments that people talk about long after the post is gone. And this is one of those moments, but let's not pretend this is one-sided, because T.I. isn't new to pressure. He's been in the spotlight for decades. He's faced legal issues. Before, he's dealt with public scrutiny, and every time he's found a way to navigate it. So the real question isn't whether he can handle this. The real question is, what exactly is he handling? Because without an official documentary, without confirmed details, without anything concrete, what exactly is the threat? Is it the content, or is it the conversation? Because right now, the conversation is doing more damage than any documentary possibly could, and that's what makes this situation so unpredictable, because there are no clear rules. No. Official timeline. No. Confirmed next move. Just tension. Building quietly in the background, and the longer that tension sits, the more dangerous it becomes, because at some point, something has to break. Either the documentary becomes real, or the narrative collapses, but until that happens, everything stays in motion. Everything stays uncertain, and everyone is watching. Waiting for the next move that could change everything. And that's exactly where things start getting even more complicated. Because once the conversation reaches this level, it stops being about what's confirmed and starts being about what people believe. And right now, belief is being shaped in real time, because as the internet kept digging, something else started happening behind the scenes. Quietly, almost too quietly, more voices began to surface. Not official statements, not courtroom testimony, just whispers, sources, insiders claiming they knew more than what was publicly available. Suddenly, you had people online saying there were early cuts of this so-called documentary already floating around in private circles. No proof, no footage, but enough talk to keep the speculation alive. And in situations like this, speculation doesn't need evidence. It just needs momentum. And momentum, this story has plenty of it, according to several unnamed insiders. And again, these are claims that haven't been officially verified. The alleged project wasn't just about revisiting old headlines. It was supposedly digging deeper, connecting dots that were never fully connected before. Patterns, timelines, alleged private gatherings, luxury locations. Details that, if true, would completely reshape how people view everything that happened back in 22-1. Now, whether any of that is real or not, almost doesn't matter anymore, because once those ideas enter the conversation, they take on a life of their own. People started analyzing everything. Old photos, old interviews, even moments that once seemed normal, suddenly look different under a new lens. And that's the thing about controversy. It doesn't just live in facts. It thrives in interpretation. One clip can mean 10 different things depending on who's watching, and right now, millions are watching. Meanwhile, reactions started pouring in from all directions. Social media wasn't just reacting, it was dividing. Some people immediately dismissed the entire situation, calling it another one of 50 Cent's calculated attention plays. They pointed to his history. The way he's known for stirring things up, dropping hints, then stepping back and letting chaos do the rest. To them, this was strategy. Nothing more. But on the other side, there were people taking this very seriously, people who believe that where there's smoke, there's something worth looking at. They started asking tougher questions. Why that title? Why now? Why bring up something that had already cooled down? And perhaps the biggest question of all, why delete the post? Because if this was just trolling, why remove it? Why not leave it up and let it run? That single action, the deletion, is what turned curiosity into suspicion, because it suggested control over timing. Control over narrative. Almost like the goal wasn't to announce something, but to plant something. And if that was the plan, it worked perfectly, because now, even without new information, the story keeps evolving. New theories, new angles, new interpretations. New theories, new angles, new interpretations. And right in the middle of all this noise, T.I. continues to move carefully, not silent, but controlled. Every appearance feels intentional. Every post, measured. Even his music feels like it's speaking without directly addressing anything. And that's where things start to feel almost strategic on both sides. Because while one side is creating mystery, the other is maintaining presence. Two completely different approaches, but both aimed at the same thing. Attention. And attention in today's world is power. But here's where it takes another turn, because as this situation kept building, some commentators started pointing out something that not everyone was ready to hear. They said, what if this isn't just about exposure? What if this is about timing? Because with a major legal moment approaching in 2026, anything that resurfaces now, anything that reshapes public perception, could have a ripple effect. Not legally, but socially. And social pressure can be just as powerful as legal pressure, because once public opinion starts shifting, it doesn't wait for courtrooms. It doesn't wait for evidence. It moves fast, and it sticks. And if that's the case, then this isn't just random drama. This is positioning narratives, positioning public perception, positioning influence. And suddenly, what looked like a simple Instagram post starts to feel like something much bigger. Because now you have to ask, who benefits from this? Does 50 Cent gain from bringing this conversation back? Absolutely. Attention, headlines, control of narrative, all of that plays in his favor. But what about T.I.? At first glance, it looks like pressure. It looks like unwanted attention. But at the same time, his name is everywhere again. His music is being talked about. His presence is being amplified. So is this completely negative? Or is there an element of opportunity in it? That's where things get complicated, because in situations like this, both sides can win and lose at the same time. And the audience, they become part of the story. Every comment, every share, every reaction, they all fuel the narrative. And right now, the narrative is far from settled. Because for every person saying this is just hype, there's another asking, what if it's not? And that question, what if? That's what keeps everything alive. That's what keeps people watching. That's what keeps tension building. Because as long as there's uncertainty, as long as there are unanswered questions, as long as there's even a possibility that something bigger is coming, this story doesn't slow down. It escalates. And the more it escalates, the harder it becomes to control. Because once the internet takes over a narrative, even the people at the center of it can't fully predict where it goes next. And once a situation reaches that point, where the narrative is no longer controlled by facts but by momentum, that's when the real fallout begins. Because now it's not just about what was said or what was posted, it's about what happens next. And right now, everything feels like it's building towards something, not a resolution, not clarity, but a collision. Because behind all the speculation, Behind all the online debates, there are real-world consequences that start creeping in the moment a story refuses to die. And this one? It's not just alive, it's evolving. As the noise continued to grow, industry insiders, again not officially confirmed, but heavily circulated, began hinting that certain business conversations were quietly shifting. Meetings being reconsidered, partnerships being reviewed, not cancelled, not publicly addressed, but definitely being looked at differently. Because when a name starts trending for the wrong reasons, even if nothing is proven, perception alone can change how people move, and in an industry built on image, perception is everything. That's where things start getting uncomfortable, because now the question isn't just about a documentary. It's about impact. Real impact. The kind that doesn't need a courtroom to exist, the kind that shows up in deals that don't go through, in calls that don't get returned, in opportunities that suddenly slow down without explanation. And while none of that is publicly confirmed, the pattern is familiar enough that people are starting to read between the lines. At the same time, talk of potential legal tension is quietly building in the background. Not new cases. Not sudden charges, but discussions, conversations about whether this kind of public narrative, especially if it continues to escalate, could cross into defamation territory. Could there be consequences for pushing a story that hasn't been legally proven? Could there be responses behind the scenes that haven't reached the public yet? Nothing official, but enough to keep that possibility in the air. And that possibility alone adds another layer of pressure. Because now it's not just about reputation. It's about risk on both sides. Because while one side is creating the narrative, the other side is living inside it. And living inside a narrative that you don't fully control, that's a dangerous place to be. Which explains why every move now feels calculated. Every appearance, every post. Every piece of music, nothing feels random anymore. Everything feels like part of a larger strategy. Because in moments like this, silence can be just as loud as speaking. And speaking can be just as risky as staying quiet. That balance, that tension, that's what defines this stage, and it's exactly where things can tip in any direction. Because if something real drops, actual footage, actual confirmation, something concrete, this situation could shift overnight. What's now speculation could turn into something much heavier, something harder to control, something that moves beyond social media and into spaces where consequences become very real. But on the other hand, if nothing drops, if no documentary ever appears, if this entire moment turns out to be built on a single post and a wave of reaction, then a different kind of fallout begins. Questions about intent. Questions about manipulation. Questions about whether this was all a calculated move to generate attention without ever delivering substance. And in that case, the narrative flips, because then it's no longer about what was exposed. It's about why it was suggested in the first place. And that kind of shift can be just as powerful, because audiences don't forget easily. They remember how something made them feel. They remember the tension, the curiosity, the sense that something big was coming. And if that payoff never arrives, that memory doesn't disappear. It turns into skepticism, and skepticism spreads just as fast as hype, which brings everything back to the same point. Control. Who actually controls this story? Because right now, it feels like it's constantly shifting. One moment it's in the hands of 50 Cent, creating mystery, setting the tone, deciding when to speak and when to disappear. The next moment, it's in the hands of T.I., staying visible, maintaining presence, showing confidence without directly addressing the storm. And then suddenly, it's in the hands of the public. Interpreting. Reacting. Deciding what to believe. And once the public takes control, there's no script. No structure. No predictable outcome, just momentum. And right now, that momentum is still building, because the story hasn't peaked yet. It hasn't reached that moment where everything becomes clear. It's still sitting in that space, that uncomfortable, unpredictable space. where anything could happen, a reveal, a denial, a legal move, a complete shift in direction. And until one of those things happens, the tension doesn't go away. It grows because people are still watching, still waiting, still asking the same question over and over again. What happens next? And maybe that's the real story here. Not the documentary, not the allegations, not even the back and forth between two major names, but the fact that in today's world, a single moment, a single post, a single idea can trigger something this massive without ever fully existing, and that might be the most powerful move of all. And now it all comes down to this. Was this the beginning of something real or the perfect illusion? Because no matter how you look at it, one thing is clear. 50 Cent didn't need a full documentary to shake the industry. He just needed a moment. And with that one move, he pulled everyone back into a story that never truly had an ending. At the same time, T.I. is still standing, still visible, still moving like nothing can touch him. So what does that really mean? Is there something bigger coming? Or has the biggest move already been made? And more importantly, who do you believe? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just entertainment. This is a story that's still unfolding in real time. Make sure you like, subscribe, and stay locked in. Because if anything else drops, you already know we're breaking it down first. And trust me, this first. And trust me, this